you, Marcus, for that beautiful prayer and introduction. And so today I have the honor of sharing the next talk, which is just it's beautiful. Once I read the chapter and I really reflected on, what God was trying to share not only with me, but what I wanted to share with you, was is just beautiful in the way that He works, and it really opened my eyes and my heart and my understanding of what He truly wants, for us as His children. And so I know that, before I dive into this chapter before the fig leaves, I want to rehash a little bit of what the theology of the body is. And I know Brother Jose gave an excellent talk last week, where he shared in depth what that meant. But I wasn't sure if you had listened to that talk. So, feel free, if you're joining today for the first time, to go back into our Instagram page, or our YouTube channel, and then listen to, Brother Jose's talk, so you can continue to follow us every week that we deliver our, or that we meet. But I'll give you like a short summary of, what led into my talk, again, and it's called Before the Fig Leaves. And so this is a great book. And the book is, again, The Theology of the Body for Beginners. And so the book is a series of, I believe, like 120 something talks given by St. John Paul II. And these talks were given between 1979 and 1984. And so in these talks, he talks about who I am, why was I created. He also talks about what is the meaning of my body and what's the meaning of love. And so at its core, this book teaches that the human body is not meaningless or accidental, or it really reveals God's plan for love. So when I was sharing earlier that as I was reading the chapter and just the beginning, and it's a book that I have already read, but I think I'm in a different spiritual space where I read it and I truly understood, what that the body is not just a body. And we'll talk more about that. But, we were created in the image of God, and who is love. And, Brother Jose just shared a little bit about, God's love and how we receive it in the Eucharist. And Brother Marcus talked about the same thing. And therefore we were created to become a gift, through his image. So again, tonight I want to take you back um, to a moment before shame, before fear, before hiding, um, and a moment Scripture describes simply yet powerfully. And it says that the man and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame, and that was in Genesis 2:25. And so this is where St. John Paul II invites us to begin his reflections on the theology of the body. And also the author, helps us understand what it really means to be human. And so I will return to the beginning, and not just the beginning of scripture, but the beginning of who we are. And so in the opening pages of Genesis, before sin, before fear, before shame, entered the human experience. So there was a moment of clarity about what it means to be human. And so that's why the author called this, before the fig leaves. And so it was a time when Adam and Eve stood before each other, before God, and before themselves without hiding, before, sin entered. So, um, and this is where we see not just innocence, but it's a revelation of God's original plan for the body. So it's very important to understand. Like I said, we'll share more, chapter by chapter, but sometimes we overlook what the body means. But it started even before it started, during the time of Genesis. So Um, so what does it mean, right? What does before the fig leaves mean? And so what it refers to is, life before the fall, and it means before sin entered into the world. So Adam and Eve, were naked, as we all know, if we've read Genesis, but not in the way we imagine today. Not in that way. Their nakedness it wasn't shameful, it wasn't awkward, it wasn't objectifying. It was truly pure. So they saw each other completely, body and soul, with no fear of being used, rejected, or misunderstood as a couple. So, why didn't they not feel this way? So they didn't feel this way because their hearts were ordered in love. So they did not see each other as objects. They saw each other as persons. Or gifts to be received. So they saw each other as a gift to each other. And so in Genesis 24, in the passage, the word says that man can fully discover his true self only in a sincere giving of himself. In other words, we can only discover who we are by loving as God loves. And so then we go on to, what does that original state reveal to us? And so we were created to live in total freedom and trust. We might not believe that now, but that's how, God created us to be free, to be able to trust, to love. Um, so imagine what it means that we don't have to prove to anybody anything, or we don't have to hide, or there's nothing to fear if we could live in that type of world. And so at one time, Adam and Eve did experience that. Adam could look at Eve and see not someone to take from, but someone to reverent, look at with awe, with deep devotion and love and respect. Eve, also could receive Adam without suspicion or insecurity, or, we often see that, right? So this is what we call original innocence. Um, and so the innocence, it wasn't like them ignoring, being ignorant, or just to what, nowadays we usually there is that suspicion. I wonder where he's at, I wonder where she's at, or that kind of thing. But they truly, there was innocence there. It wasn't that they didn't trust, it was just that's how it was. So it was the fullness of love, rightly ordered, right? And that's how God created us. And so in this original state, the human body was had a clear meaning. And St. John Paul calls it calls this the spousal meaning of the body. And so this means that the body exists to express love, to make visible what is invisible, and it's a gift of self. So before the fig leaves, the body spoke truth. Love was self-giving. Relationships were free from selfishness, and there was harmony between what they felt, um, they had intended, and also what they expressed. So there was no, wondering if, when somebody says, I love you, and you wonder, do they truly love me? Should I trust them? Are they saying the truth? Am I gonna, is this person gonna be around for long term? There was nothing of that. They truly believed that, they were a gift, to one another. And so what changed, right? And so then this is where the fig leaves come. And if you like, again, if you've read Genesis, it talks about that, right? When sin comes in, Adam and Eve disobey God, and immediately, right? You read it, and if you've ever seen, it in a movie or whatever, they realize they're naked. And so quickly, they sew fig leaves together, and that's you can read that in Genesis 3:7. And so what changed? So their bodies didn't change, but their vision changed. So then trust became fear, gift of each other became threat, like that fight flight activated, where they were suspicious about each other. Like, what are they trying to do? They didn't believe in, and they weren't a gift to each other anymore. And so love became self-protection. So they began to hide, right? Not just their bodies, but their hearts. And so the fig leaves represent every way we still hide today. And that's pretending, performing, pretending that we're okay, pretending that we're someone that we're not, performing, just doing things that we wouldn't really do, but we do them because, we want people to see someone that we're not, and then protecting ourselves from, again, from fully being known. We hide ourselves. And so why does this matter to us today? Like, how does it impact us? And so we are living after the fig leaves. And that's the reality of it is, but we were created for before then, right? So this explains like so much of our human experience, why we long to be seen, yet fearfully vulnerable. Everybody out there talks about you be vulnerable, show your true self, vulnerability, but people are so afraid to be who they are because they don't want to be judged, they don't want to be talked about. They're afraid of what people are gonna say about them if they truly are, they show who they are. It's, why relationships are both beautiful and painful. And so we're like, man, that relationship is beautiful, but then, there's things that happen where people use hurtful words against each other. We see the potential, but then they're also painful because there's that mistrust. There's when you fight and you say just mean things to each other. So, and then, why shame and insecurity are so deeply rooted in us. And so the theology of the body tells us something very important. So it tells us that our deepest desires are not the problem, right? Because sometimes we're like, why do I desire, to be in communion with somebody? Why do I have these desires in my heart that I don't want to be afraid, this desire of feeling loved and feeling beautiful, feeling seen, all these desires that we feel in our hearts. And so those desires are not the problem because God created us with those desires in our hearts, right? He created us, remember, in the image and likeness of Himself. But what they are is they're echoes of our original design, right? This is how He created us. So this is just what we're desiring because this is how we were created. So we're still longing for that original innocence that Adam and Eve experienced before sin. And so that's how we experience it as well now. So before we start feeling like there's no hope or there's no way to transform or even get close to that place where, that original place, here's the good news, is that Christ does not leave us hiding behind the fig leaves, right? Like He doesn't want that for us. So through His life, death, and resurrection, He restores the human heart, and He can do that. So remember on the cross, Jesus is stripped, publicly exposed, and, takes on our shame. He does that. He already did that. He paid the price on the cross, right? When He was, stripped, beaten. But instead of hiding, He reveals total self-gift. He gave that He gave all that for us, that pain, that sorrow, um, and he gave it, He reveals total love through that because He loves us more than anything or anybody. So he gave all that for us because He loves us. And also very important is that it's for total freedom, right? Like He knew that if we truly believed in His love and His self-gift, that would free us from us sinning, from us, even if we sin, that if we went back to Him, He would redeem us. He would restore us to that close to that original innocence. So He shows us that humanity was always meant to be in that way, and not by returning to Eden, right? But by entering into His redeemed love. And so So tonight, the invitation is simple to you. But again, deeply personal because um, I think we've all been there where we feel unloved when a sin, whether we have created it or we have, been hurt by other people, it sends us to a place of hiding. It's then, we're afraid to be seen. And, it's where we struggle to see others as gifts rather than, threats or objects. So we become sometimes isolated, depressed, anxious, right? And so I can say that, I've experienced all that. And so, God is asking us, to is not asking us to pretend that we're going to go back to that place in Eden, right? Where everything was beautiful and there was no sin. He knows, he's inviting us to let him heal our vision. Like he's inviting us to heal our heart. He's inviting us to surrender our hearts, so he can start working. And so we can begin to love again as we were created to love, right? Because bitterness, anger, all those resentments, all those emotions, what they do is they they don't allow us to feel love. They don't allow us to feel joy and all those emotions that, God created us to experience. And so, again, it's important that at the very center of who we are is a desire that cannot be erased. And it really hit me uh, when I was studying and reading and really understanding the chapter, is that because I often ask God, why, Lord, why do I feel this desire for this? Or why do I long for this? But I'm okay. I feel that I have friends, I have a family, like, you have blessed me fully. But it's, that sometimes that desire can't be, it can't be erased because we still have that desire to be fully known, to be fully loved, the desire to love without fear, right? That you're going to give all your love to your spouse, to a friend, to your children, to anybody that is around you, and that you're not going to fear that they're going to let you down or you're going to be disappointed. So we all have that desire, right? To feel that love and full. So the desires that he places in our hearts, they're not accidents. They're not a weakness either. They're not something to outgrow or suppress because a lot of times, like shared earlier, like I usually want to suppress it with like, well, I'm fine, Lord, like I have everything that I need. Like you have blessed me immensely more than I ever have wanted. Anytime I start feeling like that, those deep desires, but they're just a reminder of our original design because we were created in love by a God who is love, and our hearts will always, always long for that communion. So even when sin wounds us, again, even when shame distorts us, even when we hide, behind our own fig leaves, that longing remains in our hearts. So that's why this teaching is so important because sometimes we really can't understand, like, why am I feeling uneasy? Why am I feeling those desires when I really shouldn't, right? But it's that those longings remain in our hearts. Um, so the fig leaves represent, every attempt we make to protect ourselves, right? So if people really knew me, they wouldn't love me. Like if they really knew all these secrets that I carry, or these sins that I have committed, they wouldn't love me. They would see me differently. And, I have to appear strong, like put together or perfect. Those are some other things that we might tell ourselves to protect, our person. And so, and then, it's safer to not be vulnerable. Like it's safer to not expose myself. But deep down, those fig leaves never satisfy. They protect us, maybe, in the moment. That's how we feel. And they also isolate us, right? Because we go in that hiding and they do cover us to a certain extent, but they also keep us from being truly loved. And a short example is, there's close friends. Of course, there's not everybody that I'll share certain personal things with, but it feels so good when you share something very personal with somebody and they still continue, you feel that they love you even more because you were vulnerable. And sometimes your story resonates with them and they're like, wow, like I can't believe and it's not because that they have pity for you, but it's more like, wow, that even makes me love you more that you opened up to me and that you're such a good human and this makes you even just a better person. And so, don't be afraid to show who you truly are to those even, close to you. And so we find ourselves caught in this tension where, we long for intimacy, but we fear it. So it's like you can't have both, right? So you can't be afraid of intimacy. And a lot of times we long for connection, but then we guard our heart. So there's no way that we're going to connect with others if we're guarded, if we don't want to open up. And how many of you know that have that friend, right? That they want to hang out with you, they want to connect with you, but they want you to do all the talking and you're just like, this person just has nothing to talk about. But a lot of times is they don't know what to say and they really don't want to expose themselves, right? Um, and then we long to be seen, but we hide again. So, allow people to see you, like I said, especially those close to you. Um, this is the human condition after the fall, which is the sin, but it's not the final word. Because remember that Jesus, he does something extraordinary. He enters into our brokenness. So when we're feeling broken and we say, Lord, I surrender, I surrender all this to you, like he comes into that and his purpose is he wants to bring us to wholeness. And so he enters into that shame when we feel ashamed of our bodies, of what we've put our bodies, you know, towards, or, if we've been promiscuous or whatever it is, that shame becomes love. And he enters into our hiding too. When we're hiding, and we tell him, Lord, I don't want to hide anymore. I want to bring this to you. Like he embraces that. So remember on the cross, he allows himself to be stripped, without protection, without fig leaves, without hiding. And in that moment, the good Lord transforms what, shame tried to destroy. And so where Adam hides, Christ reveals. Where humanity covers itself, Christ exposes love. So where fear enters, perfect love was poured out, right? So he shows us something extremely breathtaking. That love is stronger than shame. That truth is stronger than fear, and that self-gift is stronger than self-protection. So when, this is the heart of redemption. So not that God simply takes us back again to that original place, but that he makes us new in him. And he's capable of loving in a deeper way than even before that time. So just keep that in mind. So, again, so when you are tempted to um, put on those fig leaves, and that can look like staying busy so that you don't have to feel like some people just, I'm busy, like they're always doing something because they don't want to. And you hear people say that, right? They say, I just have to make myself busy so I don't have to feel grief, I don't have to feel sadness. But they're really not addressing the root issue. They avoid deep conversations. If you're avoiding deep conversations, or again that you present yourself in a different way than you should, it's and for a while, it does work and it protects us, but it also isolates us. So, um, what something happens when, we're able to trust someone, whether it's a friend, a family member, or sometimes it's a moment of grace. Like I said, if you surrender to the good Lord, He always sees us, through His grace, through His mercy, um, where we just risk telling even the good Lord, "Hey, Lord, like I surrender. This is how I feel." Or even that friend when we say, "You know what, I've been saying that I'm okay, but I'm not okay. Like I've been struggling because of this." So, most of the time, like I shared, instead of rejection, we're a lot of times we're understood. And instead of judgment, we're met with compassion. And instead of others pushing us away, we are received. And because God really knows who we need at the time, and He's there with us the whole time. So in that moment, something powerful happens. One layer of those fig leaves fall away. Just if you can kind of have that visual in your mind. So we have these fig leaves, and the more we uncover ourselves, that layer just starts, falling away. And so, and it doesn't happen because everything is like instantly fixed, but because Adam and Eve, this is what they experienced. They lost this. They lost the safety of being known without shame. And so when we start giving all this to God, He starts fixing these situations that we're going through. So, and that experience becomes a little glimpse of what the Lord has promised. And so it shows us that when we step out of hiding, even just a little, God meets us there with His love and through people and through community like our group here. And so it's very important that if you're not part of a group, if you go to mass, start introducing yourself to people, because it's very valuable to establish community, because like again, God begins to restore us through others, through His love. Um, so last thing, before we leave tonight, the question is not simply why did Adam and Eve lose in that moment? So the deeper question is, what is Christ trying to restore in you and in me right now? And I say me myself because uh, every day, we need to um, be restored by our good Lord. So because every time we choose honesty over hiding, every time we choose to be vulnerable, every time we choose love over self-protection, again, we are stepping out from being behind those leaves. So we're allowing God to restore what was wounded. Um, and again, slowly through His grace, we begin to live again as we were created to live. And so who wants to live again, right? I say, it's the most beautiful thing to experience when you start, coming out of the shadows, when you start feeling just loved by the good Lord and by those around you. So, He created us to live. And so this is an invitation of this book of Theology of the Body, is to rediscover that we are not, just people trying to survive a fallen world, because that's what we're told. Like, oh, I'm surviving. You hear that all the time from people. How are you doing? Oh, I'm surviving. I'm okay. That's not what we were called to do. We were called to thrive, to be um, living in joy, to feel love and love others. And we are sons and daughters being restored by love Himself. And so I want to invite you to continue to surrender all those things that have you in the hiding, have you in that place of shame or fear. Because the truth is that, God wants us to live in truth, in freedom, and in love. And so thank you for being here this evening, for listening to my talk. I hope that, God comes and blesses you and your family, and that you're able to receive what the good Lord has for you and those that you love. Thank you. And we're going to enter into a very quick prayer.